Back here at Fall River Government Center alongside Tom Hunt, I am Paul Santos. We are waiting for the results of the preliminary election here in Fall River as Fall River picks the top two finalists for mayor here in 2019. Definitely an interesting day for the voters in the city of Fall River.
It is, Paul. The elephant, and it might at this stage be a grand elephant in the room, is of course the pending indictments of Mayor Jason Correa, some for activities before he became mayor, some directly impinging upon his activities as mayor. There are two candidates. There are three candidates tonight. Only two will survive. And I would say within the next 45 minutes, we'll know who the two are.
Well, the polls close at 8 o'clock, as we all know they do. That's the customary schedule that they have in most cities, Fall River included. So once the polls do close at 4 o'clock, we should be getting some results. And once we have them, we'll pass them quickly along to you. Very interesting setup here in Fall River Government Center. We're on kind of what would be considered, I guess, the first floor. The Election Commission is up on the sixth floor. But downstairs, there's this sort of small area. It almost looks like the old bank vault, where inside there you have the election returns. And what happens is they actually print the results and they provide copies to all media. So we'll have people running up and down the stairs tonight, no problem.
Right. Ballots are not counted by hand anymore. They're counted electronically. So the results come in almost immediately. In the city of New Bedford, the actual computer chip is driven into City Hall by the New Bedford Police. I suspect the same situation here in Fall River, so we should be hearing quite quickly.
Right here on the first floor, we've seen more media come in. We've seen media outlets in Boston, Providence make their way here into Government Center. There's no question there's a lot of interest throughout the state on what's going on here in the city of Fall River.
Unfortunately, Fall River has received a tremendous amount of negative publicity in the press. It's a sad situation. You and I have spent a lot of time in Fall River practicing law, trying cases. I headed up the district attorney's office here in Fall River under Paul Walsh for a short period of time, and it saddens me greatly what is happening in the city of Fall River.
Well, as we said, a lot of media types have continued to come in here tonight. We have a lot more activity here in Government Center. We continue to wait for the results to come in here. And, you know, as we're walking around Fall River, we talk to various people. It does seem like more people are interested in this race than we've seen in the past. And as a result, folks are hoping for a much better turnout than we've seen in recent years.
Traditionally, in a preliminary mayor's race, there is not a great preliminary race in any race is not a great turnout. That should not be the case today. It was an absolutely beautiful day. As we've spoken earlier, it's much easier to vote nowadays. Polls open much earlier in the morning. Early voting is available. Absentee voting is much easier. There's really no excuse for not a good turnout today.
Yeah, you talk about the weather, right? I remember in the old days, if you had a day where it was a rainy day, you know, people would huddle in a back room and try to figure out, well, is that going to help me? Is that going to hurt me? My vote is going to come out. I mean, is it going to hurt the turnout? Not a problem today, no question about it.
Paul, I've been on the ballot 4 times. There's a lot of things you can predict. The weather is absolutely, in New England, is not one of them.
Or standing outside of, I suppose it would be a precinct here, right, in Government Center, right behind this wall, right behind this glass. People are coming in to vote right before we get to 8 o'clock, and we're just around 8 o'clock right now, so the polls will be closing. And there's a little stairway right over here. We're going to have people running down to get the results. And then, as we said earlier, we hope to get some comments from the three candidates, Jason Correa II, who is trying to get on the final ballot in the fall, as well as school committee member Paul Coogan and Erica Scott Pacheco. Looking at the special election, which happened, it was March, actually. It seems like a long time ago, and I guess it was a little while ago. But, you know, if you're Paul Coogan, you really have to be encouraged because he did quite well and came very, very close to winning that election.
Well, not only did he do well, but I think more importantly, from the Coogan point of view, the mayor did not do well. 61% of the voters voted to remove him. That was before the most recent indictments. It's hard to see how you move that figure in such a short period of time.
And Jazel Correa continues to point out that, hey, you know what? I've been accused of something. I adamantly deny it. I'm saying to the voters, I'm presumed to be innocent. Wait until you hear my side of the story in court. And in the meantime, here's what I've done with the city of Fall River.
And he has done a number of things for the city of Fall River. I've been coming to the city for many years. It looks today as well as it's ever looked. Um, but again, when 61% of the voters, as recently as 6 months ago, say they don't wish you as their mayor anymore, and now, and since then, we've had additional criminal indictments, it's hard to see how you can get away from that.
Well, obviously, the Korea campaign, they are kind of regrouping a little bit, especially after this last time that he was arrested. And, the pictures on television, I mean, people follow, obviously, television, they follow social media. The actual vision of the chief officer of the executive branch being huddled away by, the authorities of the state of Massachusetts, very, very tough to see.
The optics were absolutely terrible. We saw the federal marshals outside of the mayor's residence. We saw him coming out of federal court with his lawyer. It's just hard to move away from that, Paul.
All right, so we're standing by right here at Town Hall. A lot of people have continued to come over, and actually we're going to be joined right now by the former mayor of the city of Fall River, and it is Mr. Will Flanagan. Will, why don't you step on back over here so we can get all three of us in? Come on in, Tom. I don't know if I could pull off this jacket right here.
I would not try to pull off that jacket.
Oh, good to see you, Mr. Hunt. How are you?
Good to see you. Well, obviously a big night here for the city of Fall River. I know you've been doing the radio the last few years. In television, right, and in sports, they always get like a former player to do color.
Yes.
So that's what you are. You're a color guy now, right?
Color commentary. I broke out the New England Hall of Fame jacket just for tonight, and no need to turn down the contrast on your screen. This jacket is that bright. But everybody's watching Fall River today. You got some other preliminary elections going on throughout the Commonwealth. But we got something unique happening here. You have a preliminary election where the current mayor is under a 24-count federal indictment. And about 7 months ago, you had a recall election where he was recalled on the top of the ballot, but then won with the plurality vote on the bottom of the ballot. Left a lot of people scratching their heads. How could that happen? Now, this has been a pretty bad week for Jazel Correa. His chief of staff was in federal court yesterday. 3 of his co-conspirators were in court today pleading guilty. The mayor is getting attacked on all fronts. He has the city council coming from the left. He has the political candidates coming straight ahead. And he has the United States attorney coming on his right. Who's covering his back? We'll see if it's the voters tonight.
Well, Tom and I were talking before. You had the whole snow owl incident, right? He always said, hey, that was before I was mayor. I have a defense. I'm going to deal with that. I've talked to my attorneys. I absolutely say I didn't do it. But then, even though he says he didn't do this last offense, now it's something that has directly to do with his being in the mayor's office, and it's happening so close to the election. It seems like a much tougher hit than what happened before.
It's definitely a tougher hit. The defense prior to this was, I was young, this was a business deal, it's a civil infraction. Why is the United States attorney investigating me? Well, now there's allegations of public corruption. It hits very close to home. You got 3 attorneys standing here on the camera. We are well aware of the presumption of innocence. That holds in the court of law. Tonight's the public opinion. It's the court of public opinion. And we're going to see where the mayor stands. Does he have that straw base of support where he can be indicted 24 times and still come out on the top of the ballot? Or is it going to be a long night for Jazel Correa?
Thoughts, Tom?
Well, I don't necessarily have thoughts, but I do have a question, Mayor. I think many cities, Fall River perhaps more than so, have been counting on monies from the marijuana industry. The letters of no opposition were issued by this mayor, but it still has to be approved by the Cannabis Commission. What will happen to the city's budget if those facilities are not approved? Because I know the city was counting on some of that revenue.
Very good question. I don't think we have the answer to that right now. You have one cannabis company in the city that's currently operational and recreational. You have 2 more that are medicinal in nature. You have maybe another 3 more looking to come online and open up. Are all these companies subject to review? Probably. What's going to happen with their license? We don't know. We saw Representative Markey recently file a bill looking to put a moratorium on the cannabis licenses in the city of Fall River. Now he represents New Bedford and Dartmouth. However, you're seeing legislative action happening right now, and for the cannabis industry, that's a level of concern.
And for the benefit of our Fall River viewers, Chris Markey was actually the third assistant district attorney under Paul Walsh, who was the district attorney before Sam Sutter, who was the mayor before Jason Correa.
Very interesting.
Only in Fall River, Mayor Flanagan?
Only in Fall River, possibly in New Bedford, but thank you for having me on.
Hey, Mayor Flanagan, thanks a lot for joining us here on Fall River Reporter, and good luck on the radio tonight.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Council, good seeing you. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Will Flanagan joining us here on Fall River Reporter, always entertaining, and of course, Tom and I both know Will through the legal circles, but Will Flanagan, Mayor Flanagan, involved in his own recall a number of years ago, so he knows how difficult the process can be, not only on the recall that happened in March, but, of course, tonight, the preliminary election in the city of Fall River.
Paul, I've known probably the last 3 governors of Massachusetts. I've known the last 7 mayors of New Bedford. Being mayor of a city like New Bedford or Fall River is an immensely difficult job, in many respects more difficult than being governor. We heard from Will Flanagan. We mentioned the name Sam Sutter. You usually don't retire from this job.
Right, exactly. Well, looking at the history of people who have served as mayor, especially in the cities the size of, say, a New Bedford or a Fall River or a Taunton or a Brockton, usually with the 2-year term, traditionally you're good for 3, maybe 4 terms at the outset, but they always say that being a mayor, you build up enemies so quickly over such a short period of time. So even though you're able to have the name recognition, even though you're able to raise the money, you've built up so much animosity through different segments of the community that it makes it real tough to be there for a long time.
I've always said being mayor has a very definite shelf life. It's almost like being a Major League Baseball manager. The day you're hired, you can start planning on the day you'll be fired. It's just an extremely difficult job.
Well, we're standing down here at the Government Center in Fall River. We are live on Fall River Reporter. Paul Santos alongside political analyst Tom Hunt. So glad to have you looking in here tonight. As we said, we're here on the first floor. Up on the 6th floor is the Election Commission office, and the results will be tabulated. They will then produce them downstairs in the little vault area down in the basement. But for the fact that the signal was a little challenging, we'd be down in the basement. But we're up here on the Media Row area. And Fall River Television is over there, the radio's over there. But stay with us right here on Fall River Reporter because we'll be getting the results as soon as they are made available, and we hope to have some commentary from the candidates tonight. So if you're, let's say, Mayor Correa tonight, okay, let's try to break it down, each candidate, Jason Correa. You're there with your supporters. You know it's been a difficult week, as Mayor Flanagan said. You're trying to accentuate the positive, many of the things that you've done for the city of Fall River. You try to say that, you know, you're going to argue in court exactly what you say happened with these latest allegations. Is there anything else you can do to try to stand up to what has happened in terms of this week in the politics of Fall River?
Well, you can talk about the presumption of innocence, as you just mentioned. You can talk about day in court. You can talk about having your voice heard. You can talk about the improvements in the city, the elimination of the trash fee, and perhaps very shortly the elimination of the water enterprise fee. But, you know, when, as Mayor Flanagan said, when you're facing 24 federal indictments, you are no longer in the court of law. You are in the court of public opinion.
And I know he's tried to do this. He's tried to say, I've added some police officers. I've tried to make the city of Fall River safer. I've added some members to the fire department. But again, as you said, the elephant in the room is hard to ignore.
It's impossible to ignore. And anyone who's been following the media in Fall River, particularly the print media, it's been like an ongoing situation. The mayor's chief of staff was in court yesterday. 2 of the mayor's 3 alleged co-conspirators were back in court today. The mayor's lawyer was back in court Friday. It's sort of like the Downton Abbey of Fall River politics. It's on continually.
And the interesting thing is, from a legal standpoint, right, when you have people flip, as they say, they then say, well, you know what, I'm going to admit that I was involved, I'm going to flip, and I'm going to testify against sort of the main player. The first line of defense is, well, how can you trust that person? That's always what the defense attorney is going to say first. Attack that person who flipped as lacking credibility.
Sure, and Jason Correa, as we all know, has an excellent defense attorney and in a jury of his peers. That may carry some weight. On the other hand, when you have 3 and 4 and 5 people testifying against you, you have 3 and 4 and 5 people testifying against you.
Well, you know, we mentioned the youth of Jazel Correa. I mean, he's only 27 years old, right? So looking over at our sister city in New Bedford, George Rogers, he had some legal issues. He took care of them. He actually served some time in jail, came back, sort of regrouped, reinvented himself, and went on to have a long career as representative, state senator, I believe, city councilor. Does Jazel Correa have time to, you know, let's say he is convicted, and again, I don't want to speculate on that because he could very well be acquitted. But let's say he was convicted, or let's say some kind of plea deal occurred. Could he make a comeback in his 30s, in his 40s?
Well, sure, anything's possible. But, you know, you mentioned a 27-year-old who was first elected at age 23. You know, you have to be 25 to be elected to the Congress of the United States, 30 as a U.S. Senator, 35 as president. Maybe we should consider an age limit for mayor.
Well, he got elected to the council at 21, which in and of itself, that was really, really early. In fact, I do recall that a gentleman by the name of Tom Hunt was one of the younger people ever elected to the New Bedford School Committee.
I think someone, and believe me, I didn't research this myself. I think someone told me at the time I was the second youngest ever elected and the youngest to serve as chairman. Come to think of it, I think my mother researched that.
And how old were you?
I was 29 years old.
Wow, very good, very good. But 21, you know, it does feel like, wow, to be on the council at 21 and to be mayor of a city like Fall River at 23. And again, you know, if you are ready for it, if you are ahead of your years, if you're, you know, a young genius or whatever, however you want to say it, should you necessarily be eliminated for that reason alone? No. But, boy, 23, mayor of a city like Fall River, seems awful early.
Sure. And, you know, just to look at the city of Boston, Boston's mayor has a 4-year term. Boston has an appointed school board. Here, the mayor has a school committee elected that he has to deal with. He has a city council elected that he has to deal with. He has to run for office every 2 years. He has public employee unions he has to deal with. He has the media he has to deal with. This is a very difficult job.
I understand, Tom, that we're going to be, possibly you and I, might be heading over to the Coogan headquarters, which is about a, 8 or 9 minute walk. You do have your walking shoes on today.
I do have my walking shoes on. I'm ready.
So we have a crew of many. A couple of people go here, a couple of people go there. Next thing you know, we have the whole thing covered.
We will have people at Erica's headquarters. We will have people at the mayor's headquarters. It is now approximately 8:15 p.m. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't have results within 5 or 10 minutes.
Right, and we're standing here on the first floor of Government Center. We are in downtown Fall River. Tom Hunt and Paul Santos, glad to have you looking in. We have kind of gone live and then kind of gone off live for a few minutes on a number of occasions tonight, but we have decided to just stay live continuously now until we get the results. We should have them momentarily. Of course, the top two will go on to the final vote in November of 2019 to see who will be the mayor of Fall River. Again, the big question tonight is going to be, what is the order going to be? What is going to be the distance between number one and number two? And who are the two candidates that are going to be number 1 and 2 in the first place?
I think it would be a surprise to many people if Paul Coogan was not one of the two top vote getters. He ran in the special election in March. He was second in that election, and I think that it would be very much a surprise if he wasn't in the top two.
And Erica Scott Pacheco, a very spirited campaign, especially in March, did end up finishing at the bottom of that field, however. So just looking at that, although she has obviously picked up a lot more followers in terms of her ability to articulate her position, she's certainly not afraid to throw a punch at the sitting mayor. She's definitely someone who makes her opinions known, and perhaps that'll garner her a better showing tonight.
And she's a first-time candidate. And if the voters of Fall River adopt the point of view held by the voters of America 3 years ago when they elected a non-politician as president, that could very well work in her favor.
So in the background, there are different people walking back and forth. Most of the media outlets have stringers that are kind of going up and down the stairs to get the results, and we have our own folks running up and down the stairs to get the results. And I know that, as Tom had pointed out, once they went away from the paper ballots and we went to the computers, things are totally different. There's none of this waiting for a car to drive in from the south end of Fall River or some precinct in the northern sector of Fall River waiting to drive down to Town Hall. It all is by computer. It gets tabulated very quickly, and hopefully that'll be the case tonight.
Yeah, I think we can all remember the good old days when we were waiting for Precinct 1F in the far north end of New Bedford for the officer to drive in with the paper results. That doesn't happen anymore. Results are tabulated electronically. They pretty much all come in at the same time, and I would expect very heavy results within the next 10 minutes.
Not really a long distance now between, say, today and when the final election occurs, the beginning of November. So depending on what happens tonight, that could be very telling as far as who has the lead, how much of a lead do they have, does the second place finisher have enough time to kind of regroup and garner the support necessary to take out number one. So the difference between 1 and 2, really significant tonight.
I think the first thing you learn as a candidate is 7 weeks is an extremely short period of time. You need to take a few days to regroup, collect your breath. You need to get involved once again with that onerous task of fundraising. You need to look for endorsements, and I'm sure that the third place finisher tonight, whoever that is, will be being called tomorrow for the endorsement of someone. 7 weeks is not a long period of time. If there is indeed a significant vote tonight against the mayor, it's hard to see how that's going to change in 7 weeks.
Well, I know you have a very enjoyable saying that you like to say in talking about endorsements, that they're not really worth a heck of a lot.
They're worth nothing, actually. And I think the statement I made is an endorsement is worth exactly 2 votes, assuming the endorser is both married and happily married.
Exactly. So especially in a situation like this where I would think that people have strong feelings one way or the other about the sitting mayor.
Oh, yes. This is not. We have a couple of open races for mayor in southeastern Massachusetts. In Brockton, where the very popular mayor, Carpenter, passed away this past July, and there's an open race actually tonight. We have an open race in Taunton next Tuesday, 7 days from today, where the mayor has chosen not to run for re-election. But that's not the case here in Fall River. We have an incumbent mayor running for re-election. We have, in many respects, his main challenger being someone who challenged him only 6 months ago. And, of course, we have the elephant in the room.
We have a representative democracy here in Fall River, as we do throughout the United States. And one of the things about representative democracy is you have to listen to your constituents. And one of the things that has been very exciting over the years as far as the citizens of Fall River goes, and that is the trash fee, any kind of fee. If the constituents say, hey, we really, really don't want any fee, you really have to listen to that. And that's been the case over the past few years.
And that, at least in the viewpoint of Mayor Sam Sutter, was what cost him the election to Jason Career 4 years ago. The mayor is in the process, if he hasn't already, of eliminating that fee. He's in the process, if he hasn't already, of discussing the elimination of the water fee. Those are 2 popular issues. But, again, we have an elephant in the room.
Speaking about something like that, right, with so many issues confronting a city the size of Fall River, is it surprising that a trash fee could really get that much traction, do you think?
No, it's not surprising to me. many people have pretty much all they can do to live their lives and take care of their families and go to work and go to church. And it's hard for them to concentrate much on municipal affairs, much less national affairs. But I think when you have a fee, which you have to pay every year, that really doesn't sit well with people.
Well, Mayor Carrere, he has his headquarters just down the street from here. So we're going to have someone from Fall River Reporter head down there to see if we can get a word from Mayor Carrere. We have Erica Scott Pacheco, her headquarters out here in Fall River as well. We also have Mayor Coogan, I understand, just right down the street, about an 8 or 9 minute walk for Tom and I to make as soon as we sign off here at Town Hall, at City Hall, at Government Center. So hopefully we'll be able to get commentary from all three of the candidates before we are done with this evening's events. It has been a very, very interesting time in the history of Fall River in terms of the politics of the history of Fall River. We talked to Mayor Flanagan a few moments ago. He himself was someone who actually had to go through a recall process a few years ago. And I know it is a few years ago, but I'm sure he remembers it very well.
And he was recalled. And the then sitting district attorney of Bristol County, Samuel Sutter, was elected in his stead. Sam served a very short period of time, was replaced by Mayor Jason Correa. Will Flanagan, actually, who we both know as a fellow attorney, did work in the Sutter administration as an assistant DA at one time. So, yes, things are coming back together.
All right, we're standing by here on the first floor of Government Center here in downtown Fall River alongside Tom Hunt. I am Paul Santos. We are kind of hanging out here waiting for the results to come in. It's interesting because you and I like to talk about how, the old days, we waited all night for the paper ballots to come in. And now it's, 5 minutes after 8, it's all over. Well, the last couple of times we've been on the air, not only on cable TV, but also in a situation like this on a Facebook page, on a online type setting, it's actually taken a little longer than we thought.
Yeah, it has, and I'm not sure what's going on downstairs. I'm not sure if they're waiting for a sufficient number of precincts to come in to report to us, or whether they're waiting for all the precincts to come in. But as I said, we should have the results very quickly.
Yeah, sometimes they'll come up and they'll say, okay, here's 1/4 of the votes. Here's 1/2 of the votes. In fact, sometimes they've handed us something that was like half the city, and as we're reading it off, they hand another paper that's the race is over. So you're right. Maybe they're waiting for the total calculations to come in before they actually print the final results and hand them off to the media. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that there's only one race on today's ballot, and that is the mayor's race. There weren't enough candidates for council to justify a preliminary. There weren't enough candidates for school board to justify a preliminary. In many respects, it's almost like a special election all over again. One race on the ballot, only 3 candidates.
Sometimes the candidates come out a little earlier. They head down to address their supporters a little bit earlier on in the evening. But the indication that we're getting tonight is that the candidates are kind of waiting a little bit, laying back a little bit, waiting for the final results to come in before they show up at their headquarters to make a statement. So they're playing it safe. They're laying back a little bit, kind of waiting to see the results come in and maybe reflect a little bit before they make a statement.
Yeah, but in actuality, most of these candidates will have someone at a precinct that they consider to be telling. They will ask for the results of that. They will text that in. So I would tend to think that within a short period of time, not only will we have a firm indication, but the candidates themselves will have a firm indication.
And actually, what they will have is actually pretty accurate because remember in the old days, you used to do the block count. It was a 50. And for some reason, I could never understand how you could take the first 50. And that was representative of 300 other votes. But it really was. If for some reason, that was a representative call of how that precinct was going to go. And it would work out very well.
It was an uncannily result, and the next step up from that in election law was, of course, what was known as an exit poll. The candidates would have in their own mind someone or some ones who were a representative voter in that precinct. As they left, they would be asked who they voted for, A great many people, surprisingly, would be um, um, unapologetic about telling who they voted for, and without exception, it was always an accurate statement. So back in the day, they would be outside the polling place at around 6 p.m. And if that person who walked out, either by age or gender, was a representative voter, they would ask that voter how they voted.
Now, when you were on the ballot for New Bedford School Committee many years back, I know you sat through a number of election evenings, not only the preliminary election, but also in the final. And, I imagine you would be there with the family, friends, supporters, and that kind of thing. Butterflies in the stomach, how nerve-wracking was it, wondering how you were going to perform in the election when you're on the ballot?
Well, if there was a preliminary election, and it was on the final election night, you usually had somewhat of a sense as to how you were going to do. If there was no preliminary election, you would just have to wait like everybody else. The way it worked in the city in those days is the police would drive in the results. Frequently, the smaller precincts would come in first because they'd be easier to count. There'd be lesser ballots, and you'd hear precinct 2F, and you'd say to yourself, my goodness, I wonder how I'm going to do there. I've never lived in precinct 2F. I've never worked in precinct 2F. I don't have any relatives in precinct 2F. And then you'd find out that you did pretty well in precinct 2F, and that was really a rewarding experience.
I know there was a school of thought, and a very accurate school of thought, which said that the area that you live is a precinct that you should take by a wide margin. First of all, is that true? And secondly, why is that true? Because just because you live 3 houses down from a candidate, why would that make you want to vote for that candidate more than somebody else?
Because they know the candidate. Perhaps the candidate cut their lawn. Perhaps the candidate, in my case, was their Standard Times paperboy. They know the candidate's family. Sometimes they themselves are family to the candidate. No, if you don't take your home precinct, you're in trouble.
Well, I remember we used to get a map out, and we would be like, okay, Tom Hunt, he lives over here. That's a Hunt area, and you do that whole thing, and it seemed to work out very well. It seemed to be very accurate.
It was. You could almost, when you heard where the precinct was, and you knew the locale, you could almost predict how candidate A would do there versus candidate B. It's really not that hard. Because many of these candidates have run multiple times. Some have run for multiple offices. We talked about Sam Sutter. Sam ran for governor. Sam ran for Congress. Sam ran for district attorney. Sam ran for mayor. Jaso Correa has run for mayor and the city council. So there's usually a history you can look at to make a prediction.
And I suppose at the national level, you could probably also make a similar analysis, not so much where the candidate lives, but you look at those swing states. I mean, that last election back in 2016, once Hillary lost Florida to President Trump, and then I think it was North Carolina, and then Ohio and Pennsylvania, it just started going like dominoes, and you knew it was going to be a Trump night.
The Clinton people will tell you they won the election by 2.8 million votes, which they did. They will tell you that 70,000 votes distributed between Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan would have given them the election, which it would have. But nevertheless, we have a system where the Electoral College decides.
Well, Tom, we're getting word from folks out here on the wings, Josh to be exact, that it'll be another 10 minutes before we are able to get the results here tonight. So, Tom and I always joke with each other about when it comes to talking politics. We could talk all night long if you let us. So this is the test tonight.
This is the test tonight. We haven't talked about the Red Sox yet, but let's forget about them this year.
Yeah, I think they're sinking like you know what. They're going right down the tubes, but that's okay. That interestingly enough, and we're not going to talk about the Red Sox too long, but how spoiled are we, right? How spoiled are we that they win the World Series last year, right? 12 months have not even gone by. And we're already like, oh, fire the general manager, fire the manager, get rid of everybody, clean house, because they didn't do so well this year.
Yeah, they've actually fired the general manager. You're absolutely right. I think we are spoiled. I think, Someone told me the other day that if the Patriots make the Super Bowl this year, in 18 full seasons with the Pats as their quarterback, Tom Brady has played in 10 Super Bowls, which means if Tom Brady is your quarterback, you have a better than 50% chance of making the Super Bowl. I mean, those are outrageous statistics that we've all become accustomed to. It's much like the old Celtics. We just became so accustomed to their winning that we sort of took it for advantage.
Well, I saw something on social media that said something to the effect of, well, the Patriots will be in the Super Bowl. We just have to know who the opponent's going to be.
Well, what I've been
cocky,
actually what I've been told is that the AFC playoff game against Kansas City will determine who wins the Super Bowl. Whoever wins that game will probably win the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Well, speaking about Super Bowls and local political Super Bowls, a lot on the agenda tonight here as the city of Fall River will decide who is going to be in the final election in November of the three candidates, the incumbent mayor, Jazel Correa II, Paul Coogan, the school committee member, and Erica Scott Pacheco, the three, who will be narrowed down to two tonight. We are told maybe a little bit less than 10 minutes we will have the results for you, and then hopefully we will sign off temporarily, and then we'll come back on live from the different headquarters and try to get some comments from the candidates tonight. So, again, Tom, you having been on the ballot, something that probably most people who are watching tonight have never been a candidate before. The decision to run, to get family together, to organize, to let family members know and friends know that, hey, I'd like to run and I'm asking you for your support, doesn't strike me as being the easiest thing to do.
There may be worse things in life than asking your friends to donate to your campaign, but as I stand here tonight, Paul, I can't think of any. Congressman Michael Capiano once said that all elected officials and those who attempt to be elected officials do God's work. And, I think there's something to be said for that. It's a very difficult thing to run. It's a very difficult thing to serve. There's a lot of family time taken away. There's a lot of sometimes aggravation, sometimes grief, but overall, very rewarding.
The other thing, too, is I think that the job of a counselor at large here in Fall River or New Bedford or Taunton or wherever, the job is a lot more involved than I think it used to be. I mean, when you talk to some of these counselors, I'll ask them, well, what are you doing this week? And it's like Monday night I have a meeting, and Tuesday night I have a meeting, and Wednesday night I have a meeting, and there's a committee, and there's a subcommittee, and then I got to make sure I deal with constituent service, and I've got to call people back, and I got 25 phone calls, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this isn't just walk down the street and wave at the parade.
Back in the day, if a constituent wanted to bring a matter to your attention, he would have to get out his pen and paper and write out a letter, get out an envelope, write out an address, put a stamp on it, and go to the post office and mail it. Nowadays, all they have to do is go to their computer, and many times they go to their own Facebook page expecting you to read what's on their Facebook page, and heaven forbid if you don't respond to it immediately. It's a far more complicated job than it used to be.
Right, and the scrutiny now, the scrutiny has really gotten to the point where, anything that you do, anything that you say, somebody out there is going to disagree with it. Somebody may take a comment you made out of context. I mean, it's a lot tougher now than I think it's ever been.
And I think looking at this right here explains a lot of it. Ever since cable TV came in, ever since cell phones and iPhones came in, where everyone has a camera, everything you do is on the record. Yes, it's become a far more difficult situation.
So let's see. They told us about 5 minutes ago that it was going to be 10 minutes. So doing some quick math, I would guess that maybe 5 minutes?
Yes. Let's hope so, because we don't have chairs here. We're standing up on a very hard floor, I should say.
Now, talk about killing time, right? Tom his car is actually in the shop tonight. So Tom said, hey, we're going to work together tonight. Santos, can you come get me? So, sure, I'll come get you. So I got in the car, and we talked all the way over here, and we're talking about everything, and we're talking about this and that. And I'm like, we'll go on. We'll knock off 10 minutes. They'll give us the results, and that'll be the end of it. I didn't expect that we were going to have to talk for over an hour straight.
No, I didn't think so either, Paul. I would have worn a different suit.
So how's the car? The car needs a couple of.
The car is getting old.
No,
Like
really?
the rest of us, the car's getting old.
So it needs a couple of minor tweaks.
Yes.
Well, Tom's riding with me tonight, which is no small endeavor. So we'll try to keep everything nice and smooth and within the speed limit, and hopefully we'll get the results over here at Fall River Government Center in a few minutes. And Tom and I are going to be heading out to the headquarters of Paul Coogan. We also will have people stationed at Jaisal Correa's headquarters and hopefully Eric Scott Pacheco's headquarters as well. We have a lot of folks looking in tonight. We want to thank you for that. We have viewers here in Fall River and along the South Coast waiting for us and waiting for the results to come out here. It is taking a little bit longer than we thought. A lot of media outlets here tonight, as we said before. We have folks from Fall River Educational Television behind us in the other room. We also have radio stations out there, and it looks like something is being wheeled in. I don't know what that is. It's a police officer wheeling something in. I don't think that's a ballot. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it is. Something with wheels. We're just trying to make the call in the background what's going on, and we'll continue to wait over here. But let's see. Someone is now heading to the vault area downstairs, and it looks like we have some folks from this precinct over here heading down there. So looks like a lot of activity going on down there. And again, as soon as they come upstairs with a final result, we will have it for you right here on Fall River Reporter. So the folks that are watching here tonight, thank you for watching. We're glad that you're looking in here tonight. We're at Government Center in downtown Fall River, and Tom and I will be out there ready to ask our questions to candidate Coogan. So do you have your questions already kind of lined up and ready to go?
I do, but the questions are really going to depend on, A, is he one of the top two, which I think we can probably assume he will be. But more importantly, was he in first or second, and what was the difference between 1 and 2, and what was the difference between 2 and 3?
Yeah, and I think that's really the big thing tonight, because if you have, say, candidate 1 and 2 separated by 1% or 2%, that makes it a real dogfight in November. On the other hand, if you've got a 2-to-1 situation, I just don't see how a 2-to-1 can be overcome between now and 7 weeks from now.
Not in 7 weeks, and not if the 2-and-1 results in Mayor Carrero coming in 2, because we know his court case will not be resolved in the next 7 weeks. I think they have a trial date on the first series in February. So nothing positive is going to happen in his criminal cases in the next 7 weeks.
I know you sat in on the debate in March, which occurred up here at the Morton Middle School, I want to say? Yeah, the new building, and obviously a great venue to have the debate at. And Tom actually was present for that, and then we had a little bit of an analysis after that. And, it's interesting because I think, debates, I think to some degree, even at the national level, maybe a little exaggerated. I mean, I think I've seen cases where someone was a good debater, but because it just wasn't the right time or the economy wasn't right or whatever, the good debater ended up coming up short. When you look at that debate in March, I mean, you pointed it out. Mayor Correa just commanded the entire stage that night.
He did. He was fortunate that he was in the center. He had 2 on both sides. He was fortunate that someone of his staff presumably told him to wear a red tie and a white shirt that would match into the background. He was extremely knowledgeable, as you would expect an incumbent mayor to be, about the city's affairs. And there seemed to be a sense among the other candidates that they didn't want to hit too hard, because sometimes when candidate A hits candidate B hard, both candidates lose support to candidate C. I think all of them were hoping someone else would hit hard. So I think what happened is you had a very assertive mayor surrounded by 4, I don't want to use the word milquetoast, but 4 individuals who weren't quite as strong as I thought they could have been.
All right, we're standing by here at Government Center. We are looking at some comments, wondering how long it's going to be. We did get a word maybe 7 or 8 minutes ago that it'd be about 10 minutes. So we're going to stand by right here, and we're going to just ask Josh. I imagine we want to stay live. Is that right? Or do we want to take a break? We want to just stay live. So that's what we're going to do. And Michael Sylvia is going to be running downstairs and getting the results for us in just a few moments. And Tom, you're I'm trying to read your mind. Like, what are you thinking right now?
Well, what I'm thinking is it's taken an unusually long period of time to get the results in, number one. And number two, I'm thinking, where are the chairs we normally sit in? Because my back's starting to hurt me.
Oh, there's a long story to that. I have this back issue, which results in me liking to stand up. So this is my fault that we're standing up right now.
Yeah, well, okay.
So you can, you have a chiropractor that you use in the area or no?
I hope there's one available.
Well, if you want to advertise on, no, never mind. We have doctors, we have lawyers. We'll advertise. We'll let folks advertise, and we like sponsors. We like sponsors right here on Fall River Reporter. Well, we are standing by. We're looking into the background, and it's getting pretty quiet down there. I think people are sending their stringers downstairs to let us know what's going on. I see someone has just made a comment. Do you have the popcorn ready? Someone bring a chair for this guy. So people can type in whatever they want.
I think my wife may have said that.
So for you, if you stand too long, your back starts to hurt?
Yes.
Oh, me, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, so at some point, like, you can sit and I'll stand, and then I'll stand and you sit. I don't know. We'll just have to wait it out. Maybe you can get a chair at Mr. Coogan's headquarters.
Hopefully a beer, too.
All right, actually, I'm the driver. I'm the designated driver
There
tonight.
you go. Two beers.
Yeah,
two beers.
Tonight. 2 beers tonight. All right, so we're waiting in the wings here at City Hall, Government Center, downtown Fall River. We're standing by waiting for the results. We're at 1 Government Center is the actual address of this location someone types in. So someone is also saying you're doing a great job. Well, let me just tell you, when you're just trying to eat minutes, right? Eat minutes. There used to be an old signal. It used to be like this. Just keep talking and just keep killing time, and that's what we're trying to do.
I don't know what the record is, but I think we're quickly approaching the record here. This is sort of like, the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase, where they talked for as nothing happened, but they talked for a couple of hours. Yeah.
All right, we're standing by down here, 1 Government Center. We mentioned that. We're waiting. If you look over my shoulder, you see that snowman over there? Someone actually mentioned, what's with the snowman in the background? I didn't realize that snowman was in view. We didn't do that on purpose.
No, and it's not actually December, although it certainly is starting to feel like it's been December. We've been here 3 months, but no, I don't know where that came from, and I don't know what that means.
There's nothing about that snowman that is inappropriate or anything like that. It just means that winter is right around the corner.
Yes.
All right. So we're standing by here at Government Center. We do have some person out there actually just typed in their computer. Predictions, fellas. What do you say the results are going to be? Tom doesn't usually go out there and say, okay, I think it's going to be this, and this. But maybe tonight, seeing as how we have all this extra time to fill, like maybe you'll make an exception tonight.
Well, I think Coogan will be nominated. Right. I think that's pretty clear. I think he probably will come in first. The question is who will come in second. Will it be the mayor or will it be Erica Scott Pacheco? I don't want to predict that. I do predict there may be a bit of a distance between 1 and 2.
All right, and you heard that here from Tom Hunt. I got to tell you, I was thinking about the fact that in the preliminary election, Coogan came so close. Let me just make a slight adjustment in the camera. Coogan came so close to defeating Jazel in a field of 5 that it feels to me like, I don't know, I think the Coogan camp would have to be disappointed if they weren't number 1 tonight.
Sure. If I recall, the precise results were the mayor 35, Paul Coogan 32, and then the other votes dispersed among the other 3 candidates. I think the Coogan camp feels that they're in a strong position to pick up the voters from 3 and 4. Erica Scott Pacheco was in that race, and I think she'll retain her voters and probably garner some more. So I think it would be a disappointing surprise to the Coogan people if they don't end up in first place tonight.
And the other thing is, what about the turnout? When we first got here tonight, we went up to the 6th floor. We had some folks up there giving us some indication of what they thought the turnout was going to be. We didn't get exact numbers, we didn't get exact figures, but the general feeling was is that it was going to be a good turnout tonight, no question.
Well, it should have been a good turnout tonight. We talked about the weather. We talked about the interest in the race. We talked about the attention this race has played, particularly in the print media. There's no reason why it shouldn't be a good turnout. We keep turning to our right here every time we see this door open, and we hope someone's going to hand us a piece of paper, but so far, no paper.
All right, well, now we have the first results. What do we have right here? All right, this is unofficial. We have precincts 29. Let me see. We have Paul Coogan, 1,436 votes. Jazel F. Correa, 659. And Erica Scott Pacheco with 402. Now, this is how many? This is 20% in so far. So it looks like Paul Coogan has got an early lead so far at 57% of the vote to Jazel Correa's 26, and Erica Scott Pacheco 16% of the vote so far.
Yeah, not terribly different from the polls we had been talked about. Polls we had been talked about off the camera tonight. It's hot. We don't know exactly where those precincts are from. They may be from parts of the city where Paul Coogan is very popular and very well known, or they may be parts of the city where the mayor is very well known. It really does not matter. I think we're seeing a clear trend here where Paul Coogan will come in overwhelmingly number one. Mayor Carrero will come in number two, and that will be the face-off in November.
All right, we're continuing to get our results here tonight. Again, 20% of the vote in. Paul E. Coogan, member of the school committee, 1,436 votes. Jazel F. Correa, the second, mayor of Fall River, 659, and Erica Scott Pacheco in third, 402. And actually, looking at that a second time, it actually looks like the numbers between 2 and 3 are closer than they are between 1 and 2.
They are. They are certainly closer between 1 and 2. And those figures, there's no way of getting around this, Paul. Those figures are good, not good numbers for the mayor.
And again, if you look at it percentage-wise, Paul Coogan, member of the school committee, 57% of the vote. Jazel Correa, 26% of the vote. And Erica Scott Pacheco with 16% of the vote. That's with 6 of 29 precincts counted so far. That's about 20% of the precincts. So we still have 80% of the city still out there. But again, you can kind of feel that early trend. And again, Coogan has to be happy with what he sees so far.
Sure. And as I did the arithmetic in my head, 73% of the people from that result who went out to vote did not vote for the mayor. In the preliminary election, it was 61%, and we've talked several times now about what's happened since the preliminary and tonight, which are the additional federal indictments.
All right, and right now, when we're looking at this, right, usually what happens is, as we said before, they hand us the 20% of the vote, and then right away they give you the 50% of the vote, and then after that it's 100% of the vote. So usually once these papers start coming in, it's very, very quickly we will get to the end tonight.
Right, and again, we don't know what part of the city those precincts came in, but I think it's important to point out this was not a local election where there was some issue in one part of the city. We'll be doing the New Bedford race in 2 weeks. There is definitely an issue in the north end of New Bedford at the industrial park concerning a new facility there. In the city of Fall River, it cuts right across the city, the federal indictments. So if Paul Coogan is doing well wherever those precincts are, it's really not likely he will not do well in the remaining precincts.
All right, we're standing by here at One Government Center, downtown Fall River, waiting for the final results so far. A good indication early that Paul Coogan may end up finishing in first place by a good distance, but we'll see, with possibly the mayor coming in second and Erica Scott Pacheco coming in third. But again, it is pretty early on. I hate to keep looking over here at these comments, but I am chuckling to myself because someone saw that snowman in the back, and when we kept saying it was going to take longer and longer to give the results, somebody said, snowball's chance in hell that you're going to have the results in the next 5 minutes. So the thing about
I thought they were going to tell you that the snowman was melting or something like that.
So, hey, when you're dealing with social media, anybody can say anything at any time.
I've learned that. Yes. Yeah.
All right, we're here at Government Center. We're standing by, waiting for the results to come in. Tom and I have been here for a while, so forgive us if we're getting a little on the punchy side, but we are going to give you the results shortly. And again, this is obviously a serious matter. The citizens of Fall River will be making their decision on who they will put on the ballot in the fall, whether or not it will be School Committeeman Paul Coogan, Jazel F. Correa II, the sitting mayor, or Erica Scott Pacheco. Again, so far, I'm going to give you those numbers one more time. Paul Coogan, 1,436 votes. Jazel F. Correa II, 659, and Erica Scott Pacheco at 402. Percentage-wise, it is Paul Coogan 57% of the vote, Jazel Correa at 26% of the vote, and Erica Scott Pacheco 16% of the vote. That's with 6 of 29 precincts reporting 20% of the precincts so far. And again, we're going to have commentary from the candidates a little bit later on tonight, so make sure you stay with us here on Fall River Reporter and the other pages along the South Coast. And really a race that not only the people are following here in Fall River, but in all of the communities along the South Coast. It's really a situation where a lot of eyeballs are on Fall River tonight.
Yeah, we have seen not only local media, but we saw NBC 10 earlier tonight. Clearly, this race has garnered a great deal of publicity in southeastern New England. I'm told that it was on the front page of the New York Times this past March, how the mayor was recalled and reelected on the same ballot. So there is a great deal of interest in this race. You're absolutely right.
And we're standing by. We just got that first paper right here a few moments ago. They ran that right up to us, and we'll have the summaries coming up in just a few moments. We noticed that some of the other media folks, along with the stringers, they ran downstairs themselves, and once they went down there, they never came back, which means they're not getting anything faster than we are. So we're getting it just as fast, if not faster, than everyone else. So we do want you to stay with us right here on Fall River Reporter as we continue to keep you updated right here from One Government Center. I want to thank a lot of the viewers who are watching here tonight live on Fall River Reporter, our New Bedford Guide and Dartmouth Guide, and some of the other pages throughout the South Coast. And in a moment, we hope to have the final results for you here tonight. So Tom and I will be heading down to Coogan headquarters. We get folks going all over the city of Fall River to get commentary from the various candidates, the mayor, Jazel Correa II, Paul Coogan, and Erica Scott Pacheco tonight. And, of course, in November, we do it all over again with the top two finishers, and we'll see who the two nominees are tonight. You know, we talked about how in Boston, the mayor's race now, the mayor's term is 4 years. They just changed that in New Bedford. New Bedford now has a 4-year term. So it'd be interesting to see how many cities along the same size of the New Bedfords, the Tauntons, the Brocktons, cities of that size will think about going to the 4-year mayor.
Sure, and it's no big secret the mayor of New Bedford was a big pusher for the 4-year term, and if he's reelected this November, as many people expect he will, he'll be the first mayor to serve 4 years. On the other hand, Paul, here we have a mayor under federal indictment. If he was reelected to a 4-year term 2 years ago, can you imagine the anxiety for the next 2 years in the city of Fall River?
Yeah, right. And then you might be in a situation where some of the detractors would want yet another recall.
Sure. And you know, there's arguments to be made on both sides. I tend to favor a 2-year term because I tend to favor democracy.
Right. You know, it's interesting because I agree with you. I disagree with Mayor Mitchell of New Bedford. He thought that a city the size of a New Bedford, a Fall River, Brockton, it really ought to be a 4-year term. But I don't know. I still see a bit of a difference between cities the size of these cities around 100,000 and a city the size of a Boston, a Philadelphia, a Detroit, something like that, where you really do need to get someone in there, someone who's not going to be thinking about reelection, somebody who's not going to be thinking about raising money. A little bit different, I think.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that having someone in there for 4 years doesn't mean they won't be thinking about reelection or won't be thinking about fundraising. I think they'll have more time to fundraise. We're getting a new result now. It's a 40% turn.
48%, and it's Paul Coogan, 2,904 votes. Jazel F. Correa, 1,157. Erica Scott Pacheco, 847. So percentage-wise, Paul Coogan at 58%, Jazel F. Correa at 23%, Erica Scott Pacheco at 17%, about 50% of the vote counted so far, about 48%. So clearly, Paul Coogan's lead is getting larger.
Yeah, and again, doing it in my head, I got 77% of the people who have voted, so whose returns have been tabulated so far, do wish a change in the mayor's chair in Fall River. I don't think those figures are going to change. If anything, the numbers have gone up greater. If anything, Mayor Carrera is closer to number 3 than he was to number 1 when we had only 20% in. So I think it's fair to say tonight that Paul Coogan will finish. He will be a nominee, and he will finish in first place.
I'm just looking the difference between the 2904 and the 1157. We're talking about 1,800 votes.
We're talking 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1. And if this was any of our children's Little League games, they might be invoking the mercy rule right about now. These are fabulous results from the Coogan camp.
I think that from the point of view of the Coogan folks, I'm not saying they were expecting anything quite like that, but I do think that they were expecting to be number 1 tonight, thinking that, you know what, if we're not going to be number 1 tonight, when are we ever going to be number 1?
Sure, and we keep going back. There was a other election in March. Both of these gentlemen were on the ballot. Both of them ran for the very same race. The only thing that's happened since then is the mayor's been federally indicted for activities as the mayor. So if Paul Coogan finished strongly this past March, as we know he did, why is anyone surprised he's not doing extremely well tonight?
One of the things we want to talk about a little bit is the turnout. And again, I think that from looking at these numbers, we only have 4,950 votes cast total. And that represents about 48% of the results that we have so far. So we're talking about, 10,000 or so, maybe 11,000 votes cast. That's really not anything that I think folks should be jumping up and down about.
No, I looked to my right. I thought we were getting new results in. And no, we talked earlier about the weather. We talked earlier about the extended polling hours. We talked earlier about early voting and absentee voting. We talked earlier about how important this race is. We talked earlier about the national attention this race has gotten. Those are disappointing figures to me.
All right, we're standing by here at Government Center in Fall River alongside Tom Hunt. I am Paul Santos. We are almost done with the election tonight. It looks like it's going to be a big night for school committee member Mr. Paul Coogan, as with about half of the vote in, he has a large lead, 2,904 votes to Jazel F. Correa, the second's 1,157. Erica Scott Pacheco in third right now at 847. So it appears it is going to be Coogan first, Jazel Correa second, and Erica Scott Pacheco third. But then we have to get into the distance between 1 and 2, and the distance is very large.
Yeah, there's no other way of saying it. The distance is significant. It's 2.5 to 1. It's unlikely the Erica Scott Pacheco voters will be voting for the mayor in the final election. So I think we could fairly say that a rather significant number of her voters will go to Paul Coogan. The election is only 7 weeks away. We've talked before about how there'll be no resolution of the criminal indictments between now and the first week of November. It's very hard for me to stand here and create a scenario in which Mayor Carrera is going to be reelected.
And stay with us here on Fall River Reporter, because a little bit later on tonight we're going to be trying to get some commentary from the mayor, Jazel F. Correa II, on the voters' decision tonight. He is going to be one of the nominees, it appears, unless something changes when we get the other 52% of the vote or so. But right now it looks like he should be able to be one of the nominees. And we're also going to get some commentary, certainly from Mr. Coogan, who looks like he's on his way to a big victory tonight heading into the November showdown with the mayor.
Yeah, not to keep repeating ourselves, but these numbers are significant. The issues in this race were citywide. There's no reason why one half of the city should vote any differently for the other half of the city. The margin is going to get greater as the night goes on.
Well, I see some activity coming from the stairway over there that leads right down to the vault where the final election tabulations occur. So we understand that Mike Sylvia is going to be coming up with the final results in just a moment, and we'll give them to you, and then we'll be off to head to the various headquarters tonight to see if we can get some comments from the candidates. So here we go. Michael Sylvia handing over us now 75% of the votes, and it's Paul Coogan with 6,495 votes. In second place, Jazel F. Correa II, 2,003. And in third place, Erica Scott Pacheco, actually narrowing the distance between 2 and 3 with 1,713. So let me give that to you again. Coogan, 6,495. Correa, 2,003. Erica Scott Pacheco, 1,713.
Yeah, it looks like about 300 votes. I believe we were told we have 75% of the vote in.
Correct.
And there may or may not be enough votes out there for Erica Scott Pacheco to take over second place. That would be a good result for her, but there's no way of fudging this, Paul. This is not a good night for the mayor.
And looking at the percentages of the vote, Paul Coogan has 63% of the vote. The mayor, Jazel Correa, has 19% of the vote, and Erica Scott Pacheco has 16% of the vote. Look how close number 2 and number 3 are.
And even more telling than that, 80% of the people who have come out, and we now have 75% of the votes in. 80% of the people of Fall River have decided they don't wish the present man to continue as their mayor.
Well, the votes have been coming in really about 25% at a time. The first result we got was about 25%, then we got to about 50. Now we're about 75%. So if that trend continues, one more time should get us to the 100%.
Is that when my chair comes?
You have some support out there, because I'm looking at the comments and they're like, when are they going to get this poor guy a chair?
I think my wife sent that in.
Oh, is that what that is?
Thanks, Andrew.
All right. So with me, I'm better off standing. You're better off sitting. One thing I know is we'll all be better off when we get the final results in a few minutes.
Yeah, but again, I don't think, the percentages are the percentages. A good result for Erica Scott Pacheco. This Fall River, New Bedford, not an easy city to run for a job like mayor unless you grew up here, went to school here, played football for New Bedford High, basketball for Durfee High. A good result for her for a first-time candidate.
All right, we're standing by waiting for the final results. The last results that we got a moment ago were actually 75% of the vote in, and we're just waiting for the final tally. But at 75% of the vote in, it is Paul Coogan at 6,495, Jazel F. Correa II, the mayor, at 2,003, and in third place, Erica Scott Pacheco at 1,713. Again, percentage-wise, it is Paul Coogan with 63% of the vote, Jazel Correa 19% of the vote, Erica Scott Pacheco with 16.7% of the vote. Total ballots cast, 10,281. So actually that is up a little bit from what I was thinking a few moments ago. But obviously you like to have big numbers, especially on a night like this. It's better than what it has been. I think when you look at it, you have to say, okay, that's okay, it's acceptable. But when you compare to 20, 25 years ago, there's been a big change.
Sure, I can remember elections in the city of New Bedford when the turnout was in the 70s, and it wasn't all that long ago. Earlier tonight, we were told by a city official that the turnout would be around 27, 28%. I think that's probably what it's going to turn out to be. But you're right, that's a third of what it has been in previous elections, and significantly lower than they have in other countries.
So I'm thinking to myself, right, if you have a sitting mayor who has these legal challenges, you have a sitting member of the school committee challenging him, you have Erica Scott Pacheco, who's really made her name for herself in challenging the mayor and calling the mayor out on various issues, and that doesn't get 50, 60, 70% of the vote. That's pretty telling. I don't know where we're headed in terms of our democracy.
Yeah, you have to say to yourself, what would make people turn out? Would it be a weekend election on a Saturday? Would it be a 2-day election, a Saturday and a Sunday? Would it be internet voting, assuming that could be done properly? But again, we talked about this on your show last week, Paul. We have young men and women fighting in harm's way in our country for the right to vote.
All right, final results in here tonight. It is Paul Coogan with 8,273 votes. In second place, the mayor, Jazel F. Correa, 2,777. And in third place, Erica Scott Pacheco, 2,171. Percentage-wise, it is Paul Coogan with 62% of the vote. It is Jazel Correa, the mayor, with 20% of the vote, and Erica Scott Pacheco with 16% of the vote tonight. So I'll give those numbers one more time. Coogan, 8273. Jazel Correa, the mayor, 2,777. Erica Scott Pacheco, 2171. Your thoughts?
A good night for Paul Coogan, a bad night for Mayor Carrillo.
No question about it. Big night. So obviously, congratulations to Mr. Coogan. Hopefully we'll get a word with him in just a few moments, and also from Jazel Correa, and also Erica Scott Pacheco, who came in third tonight. We'll give you those numbers one more time, and then we'll be signing off, and we'll hopefully be getting some commentary from the candidates. So it's Coogan in first, 8273. Jazel Correa second, 2,777. And Erica Scott Pacheco at 2,171. All right, Tom, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We're going to stay on for just a moment longer, and then we're going to be heading down to Paul Coogan headquarters. But again, I want to look at this: 62% of the vote for Coogan, 21% or so for the mayor, 16% for Erica Scott Pacheco. And I think the most telling thing isn't so much that it's Coogan 1 and Correa second, but Correa is so much closer to third than he is to first.
Almost 80% of the people who came out today say they wish a change for the mayoralty. That's the most significant statistic.
And if you're Mayor Correa, we talked about it before, to be able to make up that kind of ground in such a short period of time, only about 7 weeks, to say it's a near impossibility may even be an understatement.
Well, nothing's impossible, and certainly nothing is impossible in politics. But we've talked before, we're both lawyers, we're both former prosecutors. We know these criminal cases are not going to be resolved in the next 7 weeks. They will not be resolved this year. So whatever was hanging over the mayor's head tonight will be hanging over his head in November.
Having been a candidate yourself before, you were a school committee, what kind of feelings does Mr. Coogan have tonight? Because he must be feeling like, I'm about as close to mayor as you can get.
There's a certain feeling of numbness. You're probably exhausted. There's a certain feeling of exhilaration. And hopefully, and I believe this is probably the case with Mr. Coogan, there's a sense of thankfulness to the people of Fall River.
All right, we'd like to take the opportunity to thank Tom Hunt for providing his usual expert political analysis tonight. And we are going to be hopefully tracking down Mr. Coogan and Mr. Correa and possibly Erica Scott Pacheco in just a little while. So stay with us here on Fall River Reporter. I'm Paul Santos along with Tom Hunt here at Government Center. We'll talk to you soon.